everybody, to another installation of Practical Creativity. I'm super excited to be here with one of the most brilliant, young, upcoming, and right now artists that I know from here in Miami. Linda Cheung, she's amazing, and I'm so excited to have this conversation with her and to share it with all of you. This is the greatest part of doing these live streams, is I get to learn and I get to share it with you. So Linda, tell us just a little bit more about yourself and what you're up to right now.
Hi, Marta. Thank you for inviting me. So about myself, I've been in Miami for 3 years, started a nonprofit called Before It's Too Late, which is really a small nonprofit that's focused on the arts, using arts and technology, creative mediums to educate and inspire people about environmental issues. And we do a number of different things, but what we're most known for is doing large augmented reality murals. So these big, beautiful public murals that when we develop an app for like Android and iPhone, and if you point your phone up to the mural, it becomes animated and interactive. And we're currently working on our 4th large mural. This is the first one that's outside of Miami. It's in Chicago, in the Bronzeville neighborhood, which is a historically Black neighborhood. And interestingly, I had started this project like 6 months ago or so, but it kind of lands at a opportune, like good time, I guess, for this topic. And this one is, this mural is really exploring the intersection of climate change and the future, like building the community of the future with like how that intersects with the Black community. And so we kind of explore, and this mural kind of is a really long mural, and on the left side focuses on history and the right side focuses on future. So it kind of explores that, the connection between history and future through the lens of this Black community. So that, yeah.
Cool. What a dynamic project. That sounds really, really interesting and obviously really important, and especially now. Talk a little bit more. I want to hear more about the Bronzeville project in a second, but first tell us, how does an artist get into technology and environmentalism? And it's like you put your secret sauce into this to make it all come together, which is like really special and really interesting, really different. Tell us a little bit more about kind of your inspiration to put all these things together.
It's, I feel like inspiration comes from many places. Probably the earliest place would be that I grew up around my dad, who is super entrepreneurial and loved technology, and he always had the latest like gadgets, like the first form of the computer, and every time there was a new computer he needed to get it. He taught himself programming, and our house was just like filled with books and books of programming. And so he was just a tech geek, and he really early on just started finding ways to use tech to innovate whatever he was involved in. So at the time, my parents we were an immigrant family, and had Chinese restaurants, and we had this issue where the menu or the order usually back in the day people would handwrite the orders, but he wanted to like digitize that, but in addition kind of solve the language barrier issue with like it needed to be printed in Chinese in the back and then English. And so he created like this like POS, he like developed a POS system for our restaurants that then other Chinese restaurants were like, hey, we need that. And so I think that was my early role model.
Yeah.
And then I've always found, anything regarding technology and the future, like large issues, to be interesting to me. And then when it comes to, I had started seeing like people doing really cool, like interactive art pieces. And I found like, I was getting into virtual reality first before augmented reality. I had friends at school, I was going to MIT, and a bunch of friends in the MIT Media Labs right there working on virtual reality. I had experienced it, and I was like, what the heck is this? This is amazing. But so at first I got into virtual reality, and but pretty early on realized that virtual reality, one, is really expensive with all the hardware, but also a lot of people can't access it because they don't have the access to the headsets or even the more expensive like room scale type of setups. So I wanted to switch over to augmented reality, which everyone can access through their smartphones, which most people have. And so, you know, I cared a lot about, I guess I really just took these different issues that I was interested in or cared about and just said, let's do it all together. Like, I'm worried about climate change. I really want more people to understand this issue in a more emotional and visual way, because I felt like it's often so scientific and factual, and you know, there's people who are interested, who will take the time and who are interested in, but then how do you reach out to the broader, you know, community? And even here in Miami, I was surprised to find that in a place where climate change is such a prominent issue, so many people just aren't aware or interested. So how do you reach them in a more interesting way and meet them where they are? So that's why, you know, I started doing murals, and I realized that here in Miami, there's sort of a mural culture as well with Wynwood. And so taking that mural culture and then adding that tech layer to it, which not only makes the murals kind of cooler and have a whole hidden dimension to it, but allows you to even relay even more information and more story and more interaction like with the user.
So cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I'm so glad that you explained the difference between virtual reality and augmented reality, because a lot of people just hear any of that and they get a little intimidated and kind of either shut down or like pretend they know what that means. So I totally appreciate that. And also how you've wanted to make it more accessible by focusing on augmented reality and technology that all of us readily have. I love what you're also saying about bringing, like, meeting people where they are, making it more of an emotional and a visual kind of thing. So when people interact with your mural, what other layers of storytelling? So say they point their phone at your mural. What then are they seeing? Like, what happens as a result of that?
Yeah. So every mural has a different experience, and as we've with each new mural, we keep leveling up and, you know, doing more with it. But the most basic thing that we always start with is using image recognition. So, you know, it recognizes the image of the mural, and then we overlay some sort of animation on the mural image. So you see the mural through your phone because you're using the camera of your phone. So you can see the mural, and then now you're overlaying some sort of animation on it. And we like to integrate like music and narration, so it tells a little story. But now we kind of add more dimensions to it. So kind of sequencing it. So after you first see the first animated story, which, you know, could last 1 minute to like 3 minutes, you just see basically pieces of the mural kind of moving and telling whatever the story is. And then after that, I want to, like, we kind of spawn some, well, the mural that we did in North Miami, we basically spawn like some 3D butterflies and bees around you. So now you've got these like digital butterflies and bees flying around you.
Oh, neat.
And yeah, and that mural is supposed to be about the importance of pollinators, and specifically bringing attention to different butterfly and bee species that are vulnerable and native to South Florida. And so you can like click on the butterfly or bee and actually get a little information about them. But with two of them, we actually worked with, which is cool because I wanted to kind of cross the space between digital world and real world more. So we worked with the architect and the city of North Miami to change the planting planting schedule, or I guess like planting plan of the park, the little pocket park, and added milkweed and kunti plants, which are the host larvae plants for these monarch butterfly and the atala butterfly, which are both threatened. And so the idea is that we take these digital butterflies and we give you a matching game, and we say, can you find the milkweed plant or the kunti plant inside this park and match the digital butterfly to its host plant, which is cool.
So it's kind of like when you're doing a Google reverse image search, but you're actually like making a game out of helping educate people and getting them involved and invested in. It's not just looking up the image, right? It's like actually knowing what that means and being able to identify it. So you're actually putting tools in people's hands, and that's just so cool. Well, that sounds like it's very complex. How long does a project like that take you from start to finish?
I feel like each mural takes at least half a year. And there's so many phases to it, because the beginning phase is, you know, getting a wall and a client. Now I've started doing it so that it's monetized, because before I would just try to find a wall and do it with volunteers, and now it's not very sustainable. And now that we've kind of developed people have known about our murals, there's actually a lot of people who are interested in working with us, my team, before it's too late, to do augmented reality murals. And so I'll just kind of like, it starts from the inquiry of someone being interested. And then I just kind of talk with them and say like, well, where's the wall? What's your budget? What is your message? And as long as we kind of align on those things, and that interests me and my team, and it's an environmental message, then we move forward. And then there's really the, let's say, brainstorming and design phase, which is, well, we do a call for artists to get some muralists on the project, and that, you know, is good for the project. Or we liked working with local artists. So when we worked for the Bronzeville mural, we actually selected artists from that community. Great. So picking the artists, then we work together to create the design for the mural, the theme for the mural, what the augmented reality mural experience will be that complements the design of the mural. Then it's building phase, which is really the painter starts painting. My team, the tech team, starts developing the app. And that's really, the development of the app is split into two parts. There's the, I would say, 3D art team, and then there's the programming team. So the 3D art team is like creating the 3D assets and animating it. And then the programming team programs it all in one augmented reality experience, and then programs it into a mobile app that could be accessed through a mobile app. Amazing. And then we're doing a bunch of testing, and then we launch it.
Awesome. Eric Houston just gave you so much love on Instagram. It's like an explosion of hearts. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What a cool thing to have the art team and the tech team, and really, I love what you said also, which is bringing together not just that where's your space, what's your budget, but also what is the message. And so you're starting immediately with partners who are going to be supportive of what you're up with. Also, it starts with us.now on Instagram is like just blowing up your feed here.
Hi, Nick.
Awesome. So how did you find, so Bronzeville's in Chicago. Tell us how did they find you? Or did you find them? How did this?
They found me. To be honest, I don't like finding things. I like when things find me. So yes. I believe in the law of attraction, you know, and the whole like if you just work on the things that you really believe in and you're authentic, people who are interested in that same mission or message will come to you and find you. And so they probably found me because a lot of my work has been featured on different like news media. Some of them national news media. So they probably found me through one of those things, like maybe like PBS or, you know, something like that. And they were just like, hey, it's actually the company who commissioned it is ComEd, and they're a electric utility company serving Chicago. And they have a project called Community of the Future that's focused on the Bronzeville neighborhood, in which they're really trying to invest in this vision for like a really green and high-tech community of the future. And so they're investing in like STEAM education, and they're putting up off-grid wind and solar powered lighting at the schools, and piloting like electric car ride sharing program for the elders and children of the community, and all these different innovative things. And I thought, wow, I really like the fact that you're like doing this. And so of course they were, they had this like, they're also doing a big microgrid like system, like solar powered microgrid system for the community. And for that you need like a big battery, and the big battery is encased in this ugly concrete wall. And they asked the community, what do you want? And the community said, we want a mural. And so that's how they reached it. It's like, hey, can you do a mural on this giant like concrete casing of the battery unit that's for this microgrid? So
that's so cool. That's like literally making it a landmark, right? For this innovative transformation of this neighborhood. That is so cool. And how cool that an electric company was behind it. Sometimes I think we sell our industry short, but looking towards sustainability, that is very heartening to hear. So let's go back to law of attraction for a minute. Eric Houston was saying, like, this is so great to hear from other people. So I guess he is a big fan of law of attraction too. It starts with us says that you changed his life, a true inspiration. So thank you for all the love on Instagram, everybody. Also, if you have comments on Facebook or questions you want to ask Linda, let us know. Feel free to post those and we'll respond. So Linda, tell us more about your own creative practice. So, sending out good vibes to the universe, or like, what does that look like to you in your own creative practice? How do you get inspired?
Yeah, I think I try to be like kind and patient with myself, because I think I grew up in a very strict traditional Asian family where the highest of expectations was placed on me to be successful and go to the top schools and not do anything art related, and only, So I think that I just was bred from a very young age to be uber high performer, ambition. And it just had to kind of, as I've aged into my adulthood, I feel like it's almost this process of unlearning some of these things and returning to your true self and being brave enough to do so, and trusting yourself that this is the right path,
So good.
And I think sometimes I feel like I could feel like, oh, I'm lost. I don't know what the heck I'm doing, and I just accept that as part of who I am, and that I'm an existential person who often thinks about existential things, who goes through existential crises all the time. And that's part of what fuels my art too, because I'll just explore these topics. And I think that's like a brainstorming process. And there's work that I do for climate change and for Before It's Too Late. And sometimes I feel like I need a break from that, because when you talk about climate change nonstop, it's really exhausting.
Totally, yes.
Heavy topic. And I just like, give me a break from climate change. So in my personal, like, I would say creative practice, I try to stay away from that. And
I get that 100%.
Yeah.
It's nice to escape sometimes, right?
And so I like to do things that are just for me. It's like I'll create music just for me, like fool around. Like my roommates and some of my best friends are all musicians, and so I'm surrounded by that. And I love singing, and I also like to paint for fun because my boyfriend's a really good painter, and so I think that inspires me. So I think I'm pretty influenced by the people who are around me. And I think sometimes just creating works that I commissions for friends, or even gifts sometimes when I feel like it, doing a mural for someone, the mural I did in Denellen just last week for one of my good friends. Their parents, they own like a garden and antique store. And I was like, they wanted a mural there. I can help. So I just did it for them, you know, and it's a fun little project that I feel like those little gifts, I know that they are really meaningful to people. And especially, you know, if it's something that like painting is something that a lot of people can't do. So then you can do it for them and they really appreciate that.
For sure. I think also just something that is big and bright and unexpected really does change the energy of people's day. So the mural that you were talking about is very bright and cheerful. And so when I saw it, when you posted it on Facebook, I was like, oh, that would so make my day if I just drove past that, especially, you know, if you're in quarantine and you're not able to like talk to people and engage in the same kind of ways as we used to. That would definitely change my attitude. So tell me a little bit more about what does creativity mean to you? Like, is this a word you think about, or, I mean, you're just naturally creative based on everything that you do, but, you know, is this, just tell us more about what does that mean to you?
I think the meaning has evolved for me to be even bigger than what I thought it was. But yeah, I think from a young age, and even when I was working in corporate America, I was always told that I was very creative. And I think that was because I like to think outside the box or do things different or innovate, you know, like add a little bit of humanity to the things I did. I always try to insert humanity anywhere I could in the corporate world.
Please, we need more of that.
Yeah. But and I think that probably just, I mean, maybe part of it is genetics and part of it is just being raised in a small entrepreneur family, you know. So we always, I think that skill set of being very resourceful and looking at what you have around you and what you can make with it, like DIY, you know, like the most that you can make with the littlest. But I think that's kind of expanded because I think a lot of people, when they think of creativity, they tend to think of, you know, art or music, that kind of stuff. But I've started to think like, because I was listening to this talk by Elizabeth Gilbert, who, do you know her? Yeah. She's the writer. Yeah. And Eat, Pray, Love writer. Yeah. So she has a lot to say about creativity. And when I heard what she said, I was like, whoa, I love the way she thinks about it. And it's so true. But, you know, the way she talked about it was just by being human, we are creative. Like no matter what field you work in, like even if you're an engineer or, you know, we are creative because everything our entire civilization, our entire history is built on all the things we've created. Like, So, and so we like to not be, I guess, like for some people who might think that they're not artistic or whatever, like to realize that we all are creative in our own ways, whatever your craft may be. And,
Totally. Yeah. When I'm in a room with people and we're talking about creativity or I'm immersing them in just the world of it, which, you know, if you walk in, like I do a lot of stuff at venture cafes, you know, sometimes I'll have people show up who are like, I'm not creative, but I feel like this will help me. And it's not like I believe same as you, everybody is creative. Like the thoughts in your mind are kind of like where everything starts creatively for me, but getting people to play is a really big thing that I love to do. So for me, creativity is just getting out of that rational mind, like you were saying, unlearning, just kind of stepping away from, you know, what makes sense. Because I feel like there's so much in this world that's like about making sense. And sometimes that's not what the action is, right?
Yeah.
But we allow ourselves.
I think the whole like rational and, you know, I think that we have to realize that humans are such complex beings and that all of these different aspects of us are just as important. Like they need to be balanced. And that's really the art of life, is the art of balancing these things, like the art of balancing rationality, which is important, with emotion, which is also super important. And not to say that one is less or more important, but they're both important. And you have to know when is right to use each and how they work together. And yeah, and or even spirituality, you know, like believing in the sacredness of each of us and the world that we live in and the universe that we're part of.
Totally. That kind of like yin and yang or something, I guess. But yeah, balance. So you're doing a lot. How do you balance your life, your work? Is it just like you work and then you step into your safe space where you don't have to do work and you get to play? I mean, it sounds like you play at work too, but how do you balance?
I think it's I go through phases. Like right now in quarantine, I'm feeling pretty free. Like I'm feeling pretty like I have a lot of time, and all these things that were on my calendar just went off. So I have no problems with balance now. But yeah, I think just realizing like what do I need to do in terms of work in order to just make sure my financial needs are met, make sure if I'm on the line for some project that's, you know, I always think that's priority number one, is like make sure that you're okay, you're doing your job right. And then all that extra free time, you can do whatever you want with it, you know? And I'm not that structured of a person. Like I like to just free flow through it all. So, I mean, yes, I'm very organized, but outside of that, I like to just be in the flow.
It's cool. After music school, I decided to take jazz lessons because I felt like I had just been through 6 years of learning what the rules were and being very, very constrained by them. It just felt like too much. I wanted to make music and have fun again. Mm-hmm. Because there's something about the experience where I was just like, this doesn't feel joyful anymore. This doesn't feel, it's collaborative by like necessity. It's not collaborative because a classical musician can just start to make up these things. We actually used to, my ensemble used to get together and we'd spend the first 10 minutes just being silly and pretending we were mimicking a composer's work that we had made up. Yeah. We totally improvised the whole thing. And I've never laughed so hard and enjoyed my life so much. That was because we were just so fed up with how serious everything was all the time. So the ability to play, I think, is really important, and being able to know like how you play best and how to invite other people along is a real thing. But like you were saying, I learned jazz because I needed to play more. But what I actually learned is that jazz has structure as well. But the structure is actually the thing that makes you free. Yep. So Eric Booth talks about like enabling constraints. Like if you have everything open-ended all the time, it's really hard to free flow because you're like too free or something.
Yeah, no, so true. Like I think just knowing, well, whether it be within music, as you say, like jazz, and knowing the rules of things, and then, or if it's applied to your life, I think, you know, like routine, like how do you kind of come up with a routine that works for you? And I think what's important is knowing at least, hey, these are the things that are on my to-do lists. I need to make sure I check in on that every day. Or one thing I like to do is like set a list of general priorities for this period in time of my life. Like these are the 3 things I care about. So every now and then I just remember, hey, these 3 things. How am I doing on these 3 things? Because otherwise it's true, you're just kind of floating around, and that feeling of being lost can be really exhausting and drain you, even though you think you have total freedom, but actually it takes away your freedom.
So true. One of my coaches, who's a friend, who's occasionally my coach and always my friend, right? She talks a lot about like the difference between like tactics and goals. And often we make tactics our goals, but our goals are something bigger. So when I'm working with clients or talking with friends, and I notice us getting into this whole, like, we have to do this thing by this date, like, and be accountable, like accountability is really big in the circle of friends that I roll with. Partly because we're all definitely creative, and without the accountability piece, sometimes I like to play too much, so it's good. But being able to really ground yourself in something that is not necessarily tactical and has a definite outcome, like I'm going to bring on a client of, this much, a project worth this much by this date or whatever. Sometimes it's like, well, what if I'm taking a 6-week curriculum and just exploring new ways to move my body or something like that. So I love what you're saying about like, these are the 3 things I care about. Cause I think sometimes, again, rational versus creative, sometimes it's good to be able to focus on the beingness of like, what do I care about? Or what do I want to be right now, rather than just what do I want to do? So I love that.
Yeah. I think there's also like on the idea of creativity, this sort of myth that everything is driven by inspiration. And in reality, if you're a professional creative, you literally have to just sit down and start doing the work, put in the time day after day, and then hope that you get into a state of, and some days you feel funky and you're just not good. And, and other days it'll just create something. And so there's not this idea of like genius just flows through your brain. Like you just have a special gift that you can just plug into.
True. And when people aren't doing creative practice as their profession, I think there is an idealism of what creative work looks like. It's a lot of, just sitting down and doing the work. Like this other book I'm reading by Eric Booth called The Everyday Work of Art. He's like, the work happens when you do the work, but because you are showing up, like all of a sudden you see things you didn't see before just by committing to the practice. So again, like you have your rules and you have your structures, but also allowing that free flow. Sometimes we are the one in the way. And when we walk away, that's when we're like, But you're right. Thank you for saying that about inspiration. It's not like a constantly like unrolling thing in front of us, right?
Yeah.
So that's so important. Tell me more just a little bit about how you are connecting, or how are you being creative with the way that you show up with people right now? You're such a collaborative person. Even in, the first 2 minutes of us talking, you were like, I work with all these people and I have all these friends. So you're very collaborative. How do you get creative with that right now?
Yeah, I think it takes time to build up to a group of friends and people, creatives that I trust. And I know, hey, this person's reliable. They got skills and we can work together and we have the same vision. So I feel like once I reach that point of like, I know I can work with these people. And then there's people more beyond that in the periphery where it's like, I kind of know about them and what they do. And I think they're good people. We'll see if we'll ever have opportunity to work together, or need to. But I really believe in figuring out who you can count on, and not necessarily working with more people, but rather the right people. Yeah. And I've definitely kind of, I guess, experimented with that because I've worked with a lot of people in the past where I thought I was like overseeing all these interns, and it did not work out because you're investing so much time teaching, and then they kind of just move on. They have their own life. And something I did kind of learn early on too, well, I wouldn't say early on, but early on in my like before it's too late career, that I think is really important as a leader is to not take things too personally, in the sense of every individual who decides to collaborate with you in the moment, it's because they're inspired in some way, or maybe it works for them and it's the right thing for them in that moment. But that can change. Yeah. And I'd rather not force anybody to try to work with me or try to, like in the beginning, I would be very much like trying to, I don't know, like if you're a very convincing or charismatic person, you might not realize the type of draw that you might have on people. And they're like, oh, yeah, I want to help you. I want to get involved. But then that's really not them. And then they got swept up in your energy. Right. And then later on, it turns out they're not that into it. That's not their true passion, so now I'm just very aware of that. And I'm like, I don't really want to just draw people. I want people who want this to come to work with me, totally. And to where we kind of meet, and not to take it personally if people want to change paths, because we all have to just work on what we want to at the moment. And in that same vein, try to give myself the freedom to change the path if I want to.
For sure. You're speaking to me like out of my own experience here. So yeah, I've definitely experienced that kind of like, ooh, we have to work together. And then you start working on something, you realize like they're just not into it, or like they were drawn to something, but it's not actually creatively going to work out or whatever. But being okay, like we all have agreements, right? So sometimes agreements, and Eric saying, yeah, sometimes people drown you, and that's like what they want to see is their agenda sometimes. I'm not saying that that's universally my experience, but certainly, you know, you got to go for the right people. And that goes back to what you're saying about law of attraction, which is like the right people, always the right people coming. And sometimes it's for learning, like, okay, well, those are not my people or whatever. But I think that's so brilliant.
And I also want to say something too, because I see this a lot, that people who work in such fields of activism, or especially activism, are so committed to their mission, and it's a valuable mission, but there's so many, and that we can almost have tunnel vision, be like, this is the most important issue. Like, why can't you see this? And then it becomes tunnel vision. And I try my best not to be that. I try to honor that there are many people with many different paths and missions. And I hope that all young activists kind of take that lesson to heart too, and not take things personally. It doesn't mean you don't care, but we each are limited in our time and energy, and we have to give only so much, you know, and not spread ourselves thin.
Yeah, for sure. So important. Well, Linda, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. This is so wonderful to sit and talk and learn and be able to share your work and yourself with people out there. I think what you're doing is so amazing. And I think you're an amazing person. So thank you for sharing your time and your energy and all of your creativity with us. And any final words, any final closing thoughts?
Not really. Just believe in yourself, and also be kind to yourself, and just try to do what makes you happy and at the moments, and what you seem inspired by. Be brave. I say have courage to take risks. For sure.
Be brave. That is awesome. Cool. Well, we're going to end it at that. And so thanks everybody for tuning in, and stay creative.
Thanks, Marta.